Okay, good afternoon. It's Pete from Woodruff Grove, and I'm continuing my work on my small PowerWall. It's a series of 14 modules, two modules in parallel, 7 in series. I've got my solar charge controller right here. This is one of the PowerMR MPPT charge controller. This is a 60 amp charge controller, and I have 2 of them, but I'm just going to use one for right now. And this particular PowerWall does not have an inverter built into it, so it's going to be a little bit smaller in physical size. It is kind of heavy, but I've got to the point now where I've got my charge controller hooked up. I do not have a fuse hooked up to it yet, but that'll come. This is just a quick setup and test. And what I've done is I've mounted it to a thick plywood board, and I have stock Nissan Leaf metal pieces that will actually fit this way underneath the bottom and in between. Then I have these plates here on top that bolt down, and these are just long bolts here. The original bolts that come in for the short side of the modules here is too long, so it sits up too long. The threads don't go down far enough, so I had to just get some regular bolts and snug it down so everything's nicely compressed and not overly compressed. And so these are nice handy things to have. Does make it a little bit heavier. So what I'm working on right now is getting my BMS hooked up. I purchased the Ant BMS. This is 300 amp. This will go to 24S BMS system, and I'm not going to be running a lot of current through this. Definitely not 300 amps. And I'm just setting this up just to make sure I know how to properly wire everything. And so far, so good. I have not had anything to test. One thing I don't like. So a lot of times you might need to have a pre-charge resistor in line so you don't get a lot of sparking when you connect power. And so when I try and connect power to the charge controller, I always get sparks. Even if I put a pre-charge resistor on there and pre-charge it, apparently if there's a capacitor in there, it discharges instantly because it doesn't do any good. So that's the one downside I don't like. So with the manual switch, that'll cause arcing on the manual switch, which will eventually cause the manual switch to fail. So I can't say I'd recommend these for anybody, but they're not a bad price for what you get. And for a small PowerWall, it'd probably be just fine. So that's where we're at right now, is getting the BMS hooked up. And I did watch a couple BMS videos for doing the Nissan Leaf battery pack. So I've got all these connected up right here. I've got them connected up properly. So now I have some of these I'm not going to use at all because this is only a 14S. And since these two are in parallel, I'm only putting the BMS for each one of these paralleled sections. So I don't have 2 of these top and bottom. I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. and because these are parallel, these things should stay matched. All these cells here are matched really well, and I don't foresee any issues with them. I'm going to be charging these to 56.8 maximum, which is 8.11 volts per module of these 7 here. And on the bottom end, I'm going to go to 44.8, and might go lower, not sure. That's where I'm at right now. I have a Sine 15 kilowatt inverter in the garage, and we're going to use that as our test to see if I can actually run part of the house with that. Going to make sure I have my air conditioner off and all that when I connect everything up, and because I don't think this is going to be strong enough to run that. But it might for a brief moment, and might go beyond my amperage limits here. But I just wanted to continue with this. I'm going to show the BMS and how it hooks up for anybody who else is interested in for these leaf modules, because they're the way they're designed. It's a little bit different, I think. At least it was a little confusing at first for me. So we have a ground wire, and so our ground is going to go to our main negative, and that's what this is right here. And then the first white wire is going to come off and go to the middle pole, and then the second one is going to go to the positive before it crosses over to the next cell. Whoops. When you get over to the next cell, since you're crossed over, so your negative here, so I don't need to put a wire onto that one, but I do need to put number 3 onto the center tap right here, and then number 4 to the next positive before crossing over. So I was hoping to use my original BMS tabs when I got these leaf modules. I'll lower this down a bit here, get a little bit closer. So apparently, since I've had these for a very long time, over the years, I just kind of decided I was going to get rid of them, and I got rid of them, and so I don't have them. But I did have another set of terminal ends for a different BMS from an old battery pack, and so I have these little terminal ends here that I trimmed off, all about the same length. So I'm splicing them to each of the wires coming out of the BMS. So you want to be sure you're getting the very next wire and connect them correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and use my little trimmer here, trim up some wire. And connect all these up. That one's not wanting to go in too well. Okay, that's not too bad. So now that I've got that, we're gonna crimp that sucker down there and crimp them good and tight. One front side, one back side, so it's on snug. And I'm going to take my shrink wrap, put it on, put my other wire into the other end. Put it on there. So that's the kind of the tedious part here. We're going to set that up, and then hook that up. So I use my little handy dandy flame. Kind of a pain in the rear, but I do not have a heat gun, regular standard heat gun, so this is my heat gun. Just kind of move that flame quickly. Heat gun would work better. Shrink wrap that fits proper would be better. So got a nice little connection. So now, since I'm crossing over to the next cell, I don't put anything on this one, but I will on the center tap. So now I'm going to hook that up to the center tap. With one of the stock screws. These stock screws are small, and my end piece here is pretty big, so it's not sized correctly. And my little screwdriver, and be very careful not to touch anything where I'm not supposed to be doing this. So the problem is I have these cells really close together. And so now hooking up these, since I don't have an actual bolt head, these are Allen head, or not Allen head, Phillips head. I can't get a good tight lock on these. On this one I could, on this outside one, but these ones I could not. And so there's my next wire. It's actually kind of simple. And then we're just going to go through. So I'm going to go ahead and get these all hooked up, and then we'll be right back. All right, we return. We return after we have wired up all the batteries. And now I have a bunch of cables off of here that I'm not using. So I'm not going to cut them. I just don't believe in cutting that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to zip tie these together. So we're just going to kind of bundle them up, help get them out of the way. Make things nice and neat. So after this test, all our testing is done with this PowerWall, then we're going to build our big one that will actually power the house. And we'll use our 6 kilowatt solar array to charge the batteries. Keep everything charged. And we're going to use that and run off of batteries in the evening time, and also charge the electric car off the batteries. And then during the day, with the regular grid tie system, we're going to run our solar back into the grid for PG&E, and we're just gonna do it that way. We're just gonna basically cut our consumption considerably, and we'll use a little. We'll tickle their system a bit, take some out, put some in, like that. And they will not like us. They probably won't care. They probably won't see anything and notice anything, but that's kind of what we're doing here. So we're doing a breakaway from PG&E as best we can. Tool. Where's my tool? For cutting. I thought I had it up here, but maybe not. Not the one that I wanted. Anyway, but this'll work. I'll just pop it off here. Now I know these are out of service here. Polluting plastic. I should do linen thread ties instead of the plastic to help reduce consumption of plastic in the world. And that is something that I could do and create a nice, strong wire connection. You know, they used to use natural cordage a long time ago. No reason why we can't still do that today. But anyway, I digress. Plastic is around, it is to stay, but I'm going to try and use it minimally. Okay. So these are just out of the loop. Out of the loop. So everything else is mess. All right, so we're gonna disconnect some of these wires from this BMS for the moment, so we're not getting confused with all the wires and connections. Okay, so let's see here. What was I gonna say? Throw all that stuff away. Oh yeah, I found an Allen head for center taps. So I still have two to replace before we test this, but they fit, and it's an exact fit. Get little washers on them, and it works. So I was really happy about that. So lock washer and a flat washer, and I am going to undo a couple here real quick. Let's see, let's find my regular screwdriver here in all my mess. I do love making messes here. Good at making messes and then just absolutely losing where I dropped things and put things. Very aggravating, actually. Foobar. Oh, right. Snake would have bit me in the face. Okay. So this one off. Then replace it with this one. So now I need to get some black plastic stuff for the wires to run the wires through. Okay, nice and tight. Quick and easy, makes it really simple when you have stuff that actually works. And then you have access to, so I was glad I had a whole bunch of these small connectors. To hook this thing all up. I'm going to have to review that okay, so this is battery negative here, so I'm going to have to redo that real quick. Put that on. That looks good. So our pack voltage right now is 56 volts. So it isn't fully charged, but it's pretty good. Good enough charge to do stuff with it. And yes, have to be very careful not to arc across, and I've already done it once. Nice. Drop my tools, slide them across the bottom, where they're not going to touch anything. Get these original guys out of here. Have one left to replace, which is here, but I'm going to leave it for now. All right, so I need a heavy gauge. So I know all my connectors are connected properly. So now I need to start setting these things up. with some zip ties. Just kind of get them safe and make them a little bit neater here. Okay, so there's that. Okay, let's kind of makes them nice and neat right down the center. If you can see that, I think you can. So. There shouldn't be anything tangling anything, but those wires down there are a bit long. So I'm going to bring these ones down this way, right here in the front. Okay, so these ones here. And then these ones here. Okay, so this made it kind of short for me to mount this where I'd like it to be mounted. I'm going to have to find a better way to mount this thing. And then this is going to come along here. I may have to mount this up out of the way here, like so, and then we'll deal with these wires here in a bit. So there's the BMS connected, all in proper order. And now I'm going to hook this up. I'm going to come back later, and once I get my battery here set up, so I can hook it up, and I will hook it up to the bottom bolt here on the lower end, so I have two places I can connect connections here on the negative side. So I will connect this down low right in there. So this cable setup is not going to suffice for what I need. So we're going to call it here, and we will talk to you all later. We'll be back with this either later tonight or tomorrow morning. Talk to you all then. Bye. Okay, so we are back at the little power wall here. So I've got everything covered up with burlap because it's all out in the sun right now and it's getting really hot. So I have my charge controller connected. I have my BMS connected, including the BMS monitor right down here. So we're now at 56.4 volts for the pack, and we're charging at 6.6 amps through the charge controller. I have 3 200-watt solar panels connected in series, connected into the charge controller. We're fluctuating 71 to 69 volts going in, 460 some odd watts going in, and everything's looking really well, but it is getting hot, so I'm going to cover everything up, and you can hear the fans going. So everything connected well, and I even got the phone's application to show that. So right now it's just kind of a crude, myself back here. So I've got 3 big solar panels, and then right there underneath the burlap that you see at the top is the batteries and charge controller. So right now that's what we have going, and I'm going to charge this up. I'm going to set the BMS right now to for my charge voltage to match, or maybe shut off just before the charge controller does, so that way I can control the actual cells, not the whole pack. And that's what the charge controller does. It just controls the charge of the pack. So it's kind of a redundant system, so we'll depend on the BMS for the main, and then the charge controller for the redundant in case the BMS fails. So that's where we're at, and I'll show you a couple images that I took with the there's a couple screenshots with the camera app showing where we're at, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye. Well, good afternoon. We're out of the heat, back in the garage. Now, got the solar panels unhooked because everything's charged. I have everything charged at 56.2 volts. That's where I'm keeping it right now. And what I'm trying to do now is kind of make our wires kind of nice. So, like this over here versus this tangled up mess here. And I've got my monitor. It's got some wires coming out of it. So these are the connector wires that connect to the BMS to communicate to the monitor. And so I used zip ties, plastic nubs, all that stuff. On the other side, which is the power cord for the monitor, right here, I'm actually using an old technique, using string to tie these. It's basically a blood knot. That's what they call it in the fishing realm of things. And so I've got my connectors here to connect positive and negative. So they connect to these batteries. So these will just bolt right on. And so everything's going to be good there. So what I wanted to do was try an old technique. I've seen a lot of old cloth covered wires and old wires tied with string. So what I have is I have linen string that I've made myself and used this in a weaving project. And since the linen is nice and strong, I thought I would use that to make my ties. So we're going to get a little bit of tying up lessons here. So, got your, let me zoom in here if I can do so. Okay. So you can see one of these ties here. I'm going to move this over, and so we're going to put another one here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my string out here, and the string I'm going to tie with, I just put up against here, and I make a loop on this end. And then when you tie this up, you tie it and bring it back towards the loop that you just made. So 5 or 6 wraps will do. So you still got this end that's sticking out, and then you stick this end up through the loop, and you take this one and you pull it, and it tightens that loop right on up, and then you snug them both, and that just snugs everything up. So now you have a tie with 2 ends, and all you have to do is then trim off the 2 ends. So this is just as nice and neat. It's actually neater because you don't have any of the hard pokey pieces for tying your strings together, but it does the same thing as doing the zip ties. And I kind of like it. So you do waste a little bit of string, but I got a ton of this stuff, so it's not an issue for me to waste some. So again, I'll put a little here and a little loop. And then I'll just wrap back towards the loop, keeping each wrap next to itself and keeping it kind of snug. So I believe that some of the wrap that was used before is like a wax coated type string, kind of used for shoes, but I decided to use a natural cord from linen, which I made myself. And I did not wax this, which I could because I have beeswax. And I could wax it. It would probably make it a little better. Might make it a little snugger. And just trim these off. And when you pull on it, these are pretty snug, just like zip ties. And you can just put as many on as you want. So that's what I'm working on right now, and to see which one I like actually better. And so far the string wins out. So now I got an extra piece of string here. So I'll just loop and just tie this back onto itself. So the trick is going back towards the open loop. And it's a nice knot if you're a fisherman. It's a good knot to use. It's a very secure knot. and most string would break under the pressure that I'm tightening this. That's why I chose linen, because linen is much stronger than just regular jute type string. And then if I want, I can move it up a little bit, but that's pretty tight, so I'm not looking at doing that too much. So let's do a couple more of those and call it quits, and we'll continue with the we'll continue here with the rat's nest in a little bit, and the charge controllers. Now what I need to do is put a load on this, so I need to hook it up to my inverter, and so I haven't yet got the inverter hooked up. It's still on the pallet, unused, and gonna get that set up. And I don't have a 240 on this side of the garage, only on the other where my sub panel is at. So we'll probably tap into the sub panel and get that done. So until then, we'll talk to you later.